Hey guys, and welcome to the video. I'm sorry, but man, I've got to keep this fan on me today. It is so hot right now. I'm dying and I cannot record this video about it, so I'm sorry if you can hear it in the background. It shouldn't be too bad, but I apologize anyway. Today, we're talking about Saints Row again. Oh, goody. But I thought we'd do a pretty fun idea here. We'd make a hypothetical Saints Row together. I'm going to go through what my perfect and dream Saints Row would be like. A game that we will never get, but how I would make it if I was in charge of every single creative decision. And then you in the comments section can go down below and tell me how terrible I did, or how good I did, depending on if you have a good or bad taste in games. Most of you guys have terrible taste in games, so you might actually like my video game. Couple things though before we get started. Obviously, this is not going to happen. This is not a real Saints Row game. I don't even know if we're going to get another Saints Row game. This is just a fun video we can chill out and kind of make together and have a little laugh as we go along. What could have been. Another thing is, it's not too serious. Don't get all upset. It's just a video. We don't need to go into the comment section and cry about how AJ is not 110% gangster, okay? It's chill, it's whatever, it's just a fun video making how I would make a Saints Row game. Don't take my opinion too strongly, it does not matter at the end of the day. If Deep Silver, / Volition, / anyone who makes these games has shown us anything, our opinion does not matter. So it doesn't matter at all, okay? Let's just have fun. Okay? All jokes aside, let's get into it now. Now, I suppose it makes sense to start with the most controversial topic, which would be the story. I'm going to lump in a couple categories here because story is quite a vast little thing I want to cover. So in this, I'm going to be covering the story, the tone, the characters, the time period, and maybe a little bit of the lore. I'm going to try and wrap that all up in the story segment here so we don't keep the video going on for an hour long, although I do imagine it's going to be on the longer side today. So, how would I make a story? When would I set it? How would it go? Well, the first thing we have to ask ourselves is this a reboot, a continuation, or a prequel? Now, if I was to make my dream Saints Row, I've got to be honest, as cool as a prequel may be, I've never been a prequel guy, so I would honestly stray far away from that. I know a lot of people would disagree with that and be mad at me, but I'm sorry, it's just not how I would do it. I also wouldn't want to go continuation. The old series has been done to death, and I don't think we need to return to it anytime soon. The new reboot is, well, it's the reboot, so let's just pretend that didn't happen. And we'll go with what I want the new game to be, which would be a complete reboot. New cast, new characters, new everything. Basically starting from scratch whilst maybe keeping a couple nods to the prior series. I think that this is the best way for me to have a blank start, and if I was to make a game, this is how I'd want it to go personally. So, we're making a story rooted in a brand new universe, new characters, new story, everything's important and brand new. So, how am I going to keep it tonally? Well, this is the question I think people will be most controversial on my answer with. I know a lot of people much prefer 1 and 2 and they hate anything after it. I know a lot of people also like 3 and 4 and they think the old games are too serious. For me, I think there is a healthy balance to strike. I would love for them to pull parts from Saints Row 1 and 2, and maybe even 3 and 4, mash them together whilst keeping the quality of Saints Row 2, which obviously was the most quality-rich game. I think if they could pull elements from the crazier sides of 3 and 4, mix it up and keep it a good balance with 1 and 2, whilst keeping the quality of 1 and 2, it'd be a really fun place to start the story. So for my tone, I think I'd want it somewhere between Saints Row 2 and 3. I think that that's like a healthy balance. I'd want it to be perhaps even a little more crazier than Saints Row 2, just to a certain degree, but nothing too ridiculous outside of the realm of like possibility. You know, I don't need it to be like Saints Row 3, where it's basically just sex gags the entire run long, and it's just completely memey and jokes the entire run through. I don't need it to be like the reboot, where there is no jokes at all, really, and it's just kind of that emoji with like the straight mouth looking the entire way through the game, because that's how I felt playing it at times. I'd want a middle ground. I want to be laughing along with Saints Row, but also having its serious moments. Saints Row 2 did have a good balance that I kind of liked, but I would personally like for it to go a little bit more out there and kind of strike a middle ground between 2 and 3, as I've said. But of course, if we're doing this, we need a set of characters. Now, of course, we've got to sit here and go, do we want to pull from the old character cast? I don't think so. Again, I think the old characters have been done to death, and there is no real reason to bring them back. So, for these new characters, what would I want? Well, obviously, with me not being a character designer or knowing any sort of blank templates, it'd be kind of difficult to go with this. You know, like, how do I even comment on what I want some hypothetical characters to be? How do I even know how many characters I'd want there to be? It's a tricky one to answer, so I'm going to kind of keep it short and sweet. I would want a cast of characters that is just kind of likable, a lot more grounded in nature. Believable is a big one for me. I feel like, you know, with Saints Row like 3 and 4 even, the cast of characters we had were just so unbelievably stupid. It was ridiculous. We had a retired wrestler, a pimp, I guess. I don't know what the hell even is Zemos, man. I don't even know what Zemos. See, this is breaking my brain already. This is bad, okay? let's not think about Saints Row 3. God damn. I would want to cast the characters that feel like they can fit into the story it's trying to tell. That's not to say they have to be the most grounded and realistic things, and it's not to say we can't have more weirder and wilder characters. You know, at the end of the day, there are some characters that are kind of funny, but I want it to be built into the story. What I'm trying to say is, I would want the characters to all just make sense and kind of fit into the story, whilst not being so outlandish. You're like, even though it fits into the story, it's just goofy, I guess. But you can have wilder characters without it being, like, so stupidly stupid that they wouldn't make sense in the story they're in. Now, time period's a fun one. Now, when would I set this? This is actually arguably the hardest question for me, because I'm torn between two things. I would love for a, like, look to the past sort of Saints Row game set back in, like, maybe the 1980s. That'd be really fun, and it's worked for other games, but I'll be honest, I'm a stickler for how Saints Row was always kind of modern in its ways. I know that modern has a bit of a negative connotation with it now, but I don't mean it in that sense. Not modern audiences and whatever. I'm talking about it was up to date, that it kind of felt fresh and made sense and did kind of meme a lot of current stuff. One thing I didn't hate about the reboot was a lot of the stupidly kind of dumb gags that they had relating to like modern culture and modern media. Unfortunately, it wasn't done well in the reboot, but I don't think inherently it's a bad thing to do, and GTA also takes a very similar style, where they kind of parody how people are today in society. I think it's a fun style to work with, and I don't think it's one we should completely abandon. So, you know, whilst I would look towards maybe a 1980s game on a certain day, I think I would just want a modern Saints Row. A modern Saints Row of a cast of characters that actually fits a sort of gang-orientated game. You know, gangs do exist these days. I think you can fit both those things together. You don't have to go, oh, it's 2022. We need to have likable characters who laugh. Ha ha! No, we can have gangs in modern times, okay? There are gangs still out there. Which, of course, brings us to where do we want it set? Now, there's actually a bit of a debate for me here. Like, would I want it set in, like, a cooler, you know, country like Japan? Which would be like, oh, man, you could do so many things with that. Or keep it more traditional and keep it kind of in America. I think, honestly, I'd keep it to America. I know that this is not a very outlandish Saints Row so far, and you guys like, AJ, you're playing this incredibly safe. Yeah, I am, because that's what I'd want in a new Saints Row game. I would want a Saints Row game that doesn't take risks and just feels like Saints Row. Please. I'm kidding. Obviously, you know, taking it somewhere like Tokyo would be really cool. But Saints Row is not the series I would want to do that. That might sound really stupid, but I'd much prefer, like, a Watch Dogs game in Tokyo, where, like, you could take advantage of the technology and kind of memeing around with all the, like, cyber style of the game to really fit. I think if you were to take a cyber style city, like Tokyo, for example, I just don't think it's going to work too well in a Saints Row setting, and I think you'd want to mess more with tech, and if you were to take it to a place like Tokyo that's, like, kind of, again, cybery, I'd be in a position where, like, I'd want the game to almost be tech-based, and then again, I'd wish it was Watch Dogs. So I think, honestly, I'd keep, like, Watch Dogs. If I was to make a hypothetical Watch Dogs game, that would be the game I'd want to go to, like, a place like Japan, or, like, Tokyo in Japan, of course. But for Saints Row, I think keeping it in America is a good move, and I'm going to hit you with the hot take of the video when it comes to map, okay? Which is what we're moving on to now. When it comes to map, I would not be upset with them bringing back Santo Ileso. Hear me out, okay? Don't shout, relax, let's all just relax, people, okay? Santo Ileso is, in my opinion, my favourite styled Saints Row map. Now, I know a lot of people will look at it and go, AJ, how can you not say Stillwater? I love Stillwater to death. And, you know, its diversity and its depth and its general quality is much better than Santo Ileso. But this brings me into my point of why I would like Santo Ileso again. In the Saints Row series, you basically get 2 goes at each map. You got Stillwater twice, where it kind of improves upon the original in Saints Row 2. You got Steelport twice, where, well, it's Steelport, it's hard to improve on garbage. So with Santo Ileso, it's in a good spot. I think it's a good quality map. But, you know, add a couple of years of development onto it, what could you do? You could do a ton. You can add open areas, you can open up some of the buildings, add new districts. I mean, I like how they kind of went with the reboot, where it was like, oh, they added Sunshine Springs, and then they added Vallejo, and they were kind of adding districts to it. I think they could add, like, 3 or 4 more districts to Santo Ileso in a new game, update all the districts together, add a bunch more depth and interiors to the map, make all the stores actually stores, like, basically renovate the map and bring it up to date, and then set it at a different time of year. That would be really cool. One thing I love is when games kind of set it in different seasons, and the general color palette of the game changes, and it's kind of, you know, in Fable 2, for example, you go from, like, spring to autumn, and the whole feel of the game changes just in that small shift, and I think that that's something you could do with Santo Ileso really well. I would love, like, a maybe even a winter-based Santo Ileso map, seeing how that would go and how that would look and how that would change, you know. I wasn't too big a fan of the orange tint of the game, so it'd be cool if they could kind of remove that and bring back the overcast sort of weather system. When they added the overcast cheat to the game, or sorry, the overcast weather state, the game became a lot more bearable to me, and I now have to go and manually color correct Saints Row 2022 when I go and play it. So, you know, I think it'd be interesting to take another crack at Santo Ileso, which in my opinion is one of the coolest maps we've had so far in the series. Change the color palette, update it, renovate it, add more depth, and see how it goes from there. I know a lot of people may not like that opinion, but I don't think everything in the reboot was completely trash, and there are some things that, as someone who enjoyed that game, I would like to revisit and not completely just write off. So, I know this sounds weird, but I would want a serious-natured game in perhaps a older map that we've had before. You know, I would still want it to be a complete reboot. At the end of the day, I would not want the events of the first Saints Row or the first Saints Row 2022 to transpire into this new game. I would want this to be like, honestly, as if the first events of the games never happened. They could write that into the lore and basically literally just say that, like, oh yeah, after the Saints got the Saints Tower, the company went under and they went bankrupt and all died. I don't care, okay? I don't know how they could write it into the lore, but they could write it into the lore and kind of make it set in the same universe, but not enough that it feels like the same series. I think that that could work in a way. But for me, I would definitely like to take another crack at Santo Ileso, perhaps with, you know, a darker tone to it. Really flesh out the gangs, which is another thing I want to bring upon in a minute when it comes to stories. Like, I would want the gangs to be a lot more fleshed out. I would like to see Marshall come back. That might sound really weird based on what I just said, but in the first game, sorry, I say the first game, I mean the first reboot. You know, Marshall was still kind of kicking around and alive after we left that game, so, you know, maybe you could bring a sort of conclusion to that if you were to write the demise of the Saints into this new sequel. But of course, in my hypothetical game, I would like a blank slate, so no Marshall. That's just another thing that was kind of thrown out there as a little, like, honorable mention. No Marshall, no prior gangs. I want new gangs. I like some of the designs of the gangs in Saints Row 2022, but they weren't done right to me. Like, honestly, if we are going to pretend that Santo Ileso has this really rich history to it, with so many little secrets discovered from when it began, I want the gangs to play into that. I think they kind of tried that with the idols, but it didn't really get executed too well. You know, they have plenty of, like, old-timey references on them. You know, no gods, just idols. They have a lot of, like, Aztec symbols and Illuminatis. And I've got a video coming up on the Codex that completely explains what the Codex is at some point. I say coming up. It's been in the works for 3 months. It's probably never coming out. It's in, like, hell right now. But, you know, they did try and actually implement a lot of the old lore into this game. And I really like that. So, in my hypothetical Saints Row, I would think that'd be a really cool way to take the gangs. Make the gangs maybe based on history. I don't know how hot of a take that would be. You know, I'd love for a gang, say, to have been around since, like, the 1960s in this game. And, you know, we're the Saints who've got to finally topple this massive organization that's been around and kind of controlled Santo Ileso for so long. That's something I think could work, you know, with all the games. I feel like the gangs have never been around too long. Maybe with the first game they were, but, you know, we all know that all the gangs in Saints Row 2 came in here in like 5 years. All the gangs in Saints Row 3, they hadn't been around that long. You know, they were looking to expand into Stillwater, of course, but it doesn't sound like they've been around forever. And I think that it'd be really interesting to have a gang that's got a lot of history deep-rooted into the town and into the city and stuff. So, you know, if you did a gangs like that, I think that could be a really cool way of taking it, I guess. But I would want maybe three with a hidden gang like they did in Saints Row 2 and even Saints Row 3 for that matter. I want them fleshed out. Saints Row 3 did an awful job at this. You had the coolest gang in, like, the series, arguably, was the Morningstar. They had such a good setup. Unfortunately, they killed Get Off in a really goofy way. But I could have looked over that for the style they have, you know, owned by this big businessman who just wants to topple the gang syndicates. And unfortunately, the syndicate itself just kind of sucked. And I hated that. I hated how, like, quick the whole story was resolved. So I'd want every gang to have its screen time. This happened again in the reboot. I mean, Sergio has, like, 2 minutes of dialogue. That's really dumb for a game. So, for me, I guess I would just say I'd want the game to flesh out all its gangs, make sure the gangs feel special and unique, have unique styles to them, and I think that that could really work in a cool way for Saints Row. Now, for vehicles, I honestly, this is going to be a weird one. I'd like a mix of pretty much every single Saints Row game. Again, this is a hypothetical Saints Row. This would never happen. But if I could just pick all the vehicles from the games, I'd be happy. There's tons of really cool additions of each vehicle in every game. Like, I love how the Asher Zone looks in the reboot, for example. And I love, you know, how the Raycaster looks in the reboot. Whereas there's some cars that I think just look better in Saints Row 2 and in Saints Row 3. So, you know, I would love for them to just kind of pick a fan favorite list of cars and just put it into the game. Never gonna happen, but you know, it's something I think could be immensely cool. I think if you could just bring back all the fan favorite cars, get the ones that people actually care about, that'd be a win-win. I would also love bling bling cars to come back, or is it just bling cars? I don't know. I suppose they're just called bling variants, aren't they? It doesn't matter. I would love for those to come back, those rare spawn chance cars. They did that with the reboot. Gotta commend them for that. They had lots of unique cars that were rare spawn chances. I love that about the reboot, and I would love for that to come back in a future game. But moving on from vehicles, let's talk about the respect system. Now, this is something that will, again, divide people on my take on, but hear me out, okay? So, you have Saints Row 1 and 2, which is you build up the respect bar and it allows you to play missions. I never liked this because this is effectively forcing people to play activities so they can play the main campaign. And the amount of times I would get on Saints Row 2 and I just want to blitz through the campaign, but I couldn't, it was really lame, and it got to the point where I'd have to basically start up a save as Saints Row 2, go around, do all the activities I can in the game till I get unlimited respect, save that game, and then from that point on, I would use that save as my brand new Saints Row gameplay route. And it was just really lame. It was a stupid workaround for something that I was just never too big a fan of. And you know, I feel like it always disrupted the gameplay for me personally, because I didn't want to sit there after a really intense moment happened in the story and grind out activities. That to me was never super fun. So, you know, when it comes to a respect system, I don't like how the original games did it personally. I know that that's going to be a hot take, but it's just my opinion. I really didn't like it. I don't like how the reboot does its respect system either. I think it's pretty silly. So I'm going to just give you my favorite respect system, which was the Saints Row 3 and 4 system, but I'd want a couple mandatory upgrades, okay? I absolutely hate when they put level caps in place, because to me, it's like the dev is saying, yeah, you did a great job, you got to this point, you've got all the abilities, so we're just going to not let you progress any further. And it's always just been really silly to me in literally every single game. The only time I can ever excuse it is games where the, like, difficulty scales with your level, because at that point then you've got to add rewards and buffs for every single level up you get, and it's a bit more work. I get that. But for games like Saints Row, is it so hard to just have the little number keep going up? Like, in Saints Row 3, you can get to, what, level 50, and then immediately, there's no further you can get. That level just doesn't keep going up. And it's really lame, because you can keep getting respect, it just doesn't affect the number. So, in my hypothetical respect system, I would have it so that you could effectively keep leveling up, keep going, and you don't necessarily have to unlock anything after, say, level 50, but you could just keep letting the number progress and go for the highest number you can, and maybe had some, like, really hidden rewards for super high levels. That'd be really cool to me. Another mandatory change for me would be having the ability to kind of, like, unclick a certain ability that you have equipped. For example, if you want to dual wield pistols, you have to do that in the ability section of the upgrades, and that's fine. But to me, the fact you can't just click A to unenable that and go back to one pistol is kind of silly. So for me, my ultimate respect system would basically be the 3 and 4 respect system, where the more you progress, the more upgrades you can equip, and you can unlock certain different variants of weapons and different upgrades that just make your character kind of badass. But I would also want to make sure that A, you can keep climbing those levels, keep upgrading those ranks, and go for the highest rank you want to personally achieve. And B, that you could unclick some of those levels if you don't want them, you know, you can unequip some of those abilities. Because at the end of the day, not everyone's going to want to be a walking god. Sometimes for a certain thing, you need to have regular health. And you shouldn't have to go back to a lower save just to achieve that. Speaking of things I would actually bring back from Saints Row 3 and 4 real quick, this is another bit of a hot take, I think. I think some people are going to be upset with me for this. I would personally bring back the combat from 3 and 4. I know that people are going to say that Saints Row 1 and 2 had better combat, and I'm not going to completely disagree. And I know that nobody is going to say that the reboot had better combat, and if you do, I will completely disagree. But at the end of the day, I think 3 and 4 had a really good balance of feeling loose, having a bit of, like, tactical sort of gameplay. You can, you know, if you aim, you can hit your shots, you can be more accurate, you can hit those headshots, do more damage. And it felt fluid enough that it felt like old Saints Row at the same time. I think it just had a really good balance of, like, fluid and fun, whilst also adding a bit of a skill gap. Not much, but enough that it's there. And to me, the main thing is, it still, to this day, feels like the most modern combat Saints Row has ever had. The only things I guess I would add to it if I was having the ideal Saints Row where everything is possible, I would love for them to somehow get that parkour system working, and I wouldn't completely be opposed to a cover system. I know that that's going to be a bit like, why are you copying GTA? That's not the intention there. I just think that a cover system could work really well for Saints Row with how many random things can happen, and I think it'd be interesting to add that sort of character dynamic. I mean, you already have people crouching behind objects to get better shots and also not die, so like, it's not that different to what we have now. It's just more official. So I guess that I would be completely fine with a cover system, but here's a hot take number 2. I would be okay with the Reboot's finisher system coming back. Now, I know people like Flippy have never been too big a fan of these really over-dramatic finishers, and that's completely fine. But I really like how the Reboot had that finisher system, and I like that it restored health. I think it would be cool if it was less annoying and obstructive of it being in the middle of your screen as a big purple fleur-de-lis. I think if you could put that as a simple little bar above the rifle, for example, just to say, hey, your meter's full, you can go get a free health boost if you attack an enemy right now, that'd be really cool, but obviously I'd want them to keep natural regen there. I wouldn't want natural regeneration to just disappear, so in my world, it'd be a combination of 3, 4, and the reboots. Obviously, there are elements of Saints Row 1 and 2 I'd want to come back. The fluidity between changing weapons and stuff, and just general movement would feel great. But I think if they were to kind of hijack the finisher gives you extra health back, whilst keeping natural regeneration, it could lead to some really cool moments where people want to use these random executioners. I think that, keeping those executioners, those really cool animations, is worth keeping, to be completely honest with you. But at the same time, I don't think it's worth building a whole system around it, and the health regen system around it's not good. So I would be completely fine with them keeping a sort of finishing move restores health, so long as normal combat is not interfered with here, and normal combat feels fun and you can regen normally. And most importantly, if you don't like the finisher system, you can completely avoid it. Now, we're talking activities. This is going to be a bit of a difficult one here, but I've got a heavy preference towards Saints Row 2 when it comes to activities here. To be completely honest, 95% of all the activities I actually like in this series come from that game. I mean, you got Demo Derby, you got Fight Club, you got Fuzz, you got Septic Avenger. I mean, honestly, even the bad activities aren't that bad, and I'd want to bring those ones back majorly. I'd also want the classics back. I don't think there's anything too wrong with having, a bit of insurance fraud in there. Insurance fraud's fun. Mayhem's always good. I actually really like how the Reboot did Mayhem, but the levels were just so linear. I like that they had like the big explosions and tons of objects to destroy, but it shouldn't have been too easy. So, it feels like they really hold your hand through that. So I think if they could kind of bring together the best iterations from across the series, put it into this game, that'd be completely fine. I can't think of any new activities off the top of my head I particularly want to see coming back, but I definitely would want to see some really cool activities coming back. Speaking of activities coming back, diversions. These are important too. I want them to basically go to Saints Row 2 and take every diversion that game has and put it in this hypothetical game. On top of that, I want them to kind of implement new ones too. I would love to see some random ass diversions. Again, I'm not a game dev. I can't think of some off the top of my head. Give me more time. Perhaps I could formulate a perfect script of how to do this. But at the end of the day, I'm not a game dev. It's going towards nothing but a fun little video here. But I think that adding some cool diversions based on certain objects and stuff would be really cool. I would also like for them to bring back that system where you could like pick up any object and make it become a weapon. In Flippy's wishlist video, he had a really good point where it was talking about how you could basically make custom weapons out of random objects you'd pick up, and I think this is a great thing to implement into my hypothetical Saints Row. The example he used is he picks up a bottle, throws it at someone. Maybe a melee weapon he could then pick up from that point is a broken bottle glass that he could attack with. Just a reskin knife, but again, just a cool weapon to unlock. I want to build upon this and say, that system's great, but it'd be cool if, as you pick it up, say you unlock a new weapon or a new visual mod like you have in the Reboot for friendly fire. So let's say you pick up an object, you smash it, and you get a new weapon unlocked, or new visual mod unlocked. A little prompt pops up on screen. Well, now, at this point, no matter where you are in the game, you can go to friendly fire and pick up that visual mod, and it's like an unlocked weapon, and you can reskin any of your melee weapons towards it. This is really cool, and, the weapon customization was great in the Reboot, so I think that this is how I would want them to approach that in my hypothetical game here. Okay, let's get back onto the big boy here. Customization. Now, it's always been my hot take that for me, I felt that Saints Row 2022's customization fit my characters better, but I know for a fact it's not the best, so I'm going to keep this one short and sweet because this video's like, it's getting kind of long and I don't want to keep you guys here on these smaller things, but obviously customization is big, so, I think for me, I would want them to kind of merge Saints Row 2's customization with Saints Row 2022's customization. Both have unique elements the other game doesn't have, and I think if you were to just merge all these things together, whilst maybe adding a couple more to keep it fresh if you can think of any, I think that this would work perfectly. You know, stuff like the pitch slider that you don't have in Saints Row 2, you know, you could bring that to Saints Row 2's customization. And stuff like the walk styles or, you know, the melee styles, you could bring that towards Saints Row 2022's customization. Basically, just merge a system that would work really well. And hopefully, in theory, we would get the best customization you had in the series if you were to just merge both of those systems together, because they're both incredible, and once combined, they're basically unstoppable. It's at this point I want to just bring up, I'm trying to be fair to every single Saints Row game here, and admit that every single Saints Row game in the series, no matter how much I like them or dislike them, brought some cool things to the table. And, you know, if I was to make a hypothetical Saints Row, I'd want to grab features from a lot of games, including the newest one that people don't like. I've just got to kind of be fair here with the systems, and, you know, there are things I just want to bring back from these certain games. Before we move on from customization, I didn't really know where to fit this one in, so I'm just going to throw it here. I'd love the wingsuit to come back. I know a lot of people kind of are upset that we lost stuff like, you know, doing handstands on cars and stuff, and that's fine. I understand it's a preference point. I personally think the wingsuit being as useful and as fun as it is worth the payoff of losing a couple mini side things. It's one of those things where it's like, I can accept losing out on a couple things here to keep this possible. So yeah, I'm just going to throw wingsuit in here because the wingsuit's cool and I like it. Let's talk lore. One thing I'm going to commend the Reboot for here, because the Reboot did an exceptional job of it, was giving the map some lore, man. Like, oh my god. If you go around, there are like literal signs that would just read out parts of the map, what they stand for, how they got here, and the history behind them. And I think that's really cool. It really keeps the map feeling realistic, and to me, it was why I was able to get so into the map, and it's why the setting to me is my favourite out of the entire series. It's because as I'm going around the map, when I'm sitting here thinking, like, oh, it has its shortcomings here, it starts to feel like a real place with all the different hidden history stuff that they tell you about. All these locations that are actually explained to the player. They're not just random shells, they're not just random sandbox buildings. Or if they are, they're expanded on and kind of at least given a meaning. And I really like that. I think it's a good way of letting the players kind of engage with the map. And to me, I think it's just really cool. I just think it's a really cool way of, you know, keeping the map fresh, keeping it updated, letting people know that, you know, there is more going on than just what meets the eye. It's not just shells for people to cause chaos in. There's some actual cool things happening here. And I just think that that's really neat. So in my hypothetical Saints Row game here, I would want the lore to be big. I would want the exact same systems to come back from the reboot, perhaps even expand upon it. You know, if we were to open things like the museums, again, I'm technically saying here that in my dream game, we'd have Santo Ileso back. So you could open things like the museum and let people read that text around the museum that's actually there, and it's worth reading, by the way, at any point in the game. And it's just really cool to do that. You know, you could expand upon the map and give it more depth, more details, more history. You could explain what happened in the years set between when the first reboot was set and the new reboot was set, if we was to continue on the series, which we're not, but I'm just saying, if you were, it'd be cool to that too. Alright, now we got cheats. Cheats. Now, my favourite cheat selection was Saints Row 2's. I gotta say, the reboot's cheats were pretty bad, and so were 3 and 4's, to be honest. Saints Row 2 had just some insane cheats, and I loved it for it, man. I mean, you had ones that would make the boss humongous, tiny, low gravity, jump really high. Stuff like that was just so cool, and you lose it in the newer games. So, again, because this video is kind of trailing on a bit long here, I'll keep it short and sweet because I'm waffling too much, man. For me, I would want the cheat selection to be kind of outlandish. This is where I wanted, you know, hypothetical volition to use all their crazy elements. I don't need in the story. I don't want to be playing board games in the story, but if I was to enable a cheat that would transform the entire world into a board game and every enemy would be a cardboard snake, I'd be like, what the hell, that's kind of cool. That's a really fun way of making the open world just absolutely crazy. And you know, I think it's elements like that that were really lost upon Volition, sadly, with their design philosophy. They just throw it too much into the story in the main campaign and distract from the story that's trying to be told. Love them or hate them for it. There are times where I loved it for that, and there are times where I hated it for that. But for me, if I was to make my game, I would love for like the cheats to be the crazy part, where the Saints Row devs get absolutely wild and really creative. I'd love for like hidden levels to be in the cheats, which I think would be absolutely insane. Again, how possible would it be? I've got no clue, but this is just, again, how I would want cheats to go. I'd want the craziest cheats that would transform the entire game. Now, again, this is one that I think people will disagree with, and that's completely fine. When it comes to multiplayer, I'm really conflicted. I understand that the old style of multiplayer was really popular, where it was team v team competitive. At the end of the day, that's not necessarily where I would take the multiplayer if I had my game. And that is, of course, excluding the history of the series. A lot of this stuff, by the way, is excluding Saints Row's history. Like, I understand that if I was to make a new Saints Row game, I would have to bring back the classic formula, because that's the formula people want. This is like, excluding all outside motives, what would my game want to be like, if that makes sense. So, for multiplayer, I think I would take inspiration from games such as GTA, and I know that that's bad, and GTA Online is definitely bad, but, you know, I wouldn't want it to go down that route. But I like the concept of basically an 8-player co-op where we can go about doing custom missions that were made specifically for the online. But I would really focus it more on game modes people could play together and activities people could do together than just like online missions and online heists like GTA does. Like, I think it would be so cool to basically take the concept me and Mr. Saints Godzilla had the other day, where, you know, you had to blend in with the NPCs and try and not get spotted by the hunter, and do that with 8 players. 8 players hiding in a district, and they have to kind of blend in, whilst 2 hunters are going around and chasing them, for example. You could do so much by just having an 8 to 10 player co-op. So, I guess, for me, how I would want to do it, I would want there to be 8-player co-op at minimum, and then I would also want there to be a separate multiplayer mode, which is that more classic PvP mode. You know, I would like there to be like Team Deathmatch and all the stuff that they had back then, Gangster or whatever, and kind of keep that mode separate from the 8-player co-op, and then keep the 8-player co-op the more goofy side of things, you know, with the weird activities you can do together, the custom game modes you can do together, and keep them separate so that the people who like the competitive nature of Saints Row, they can border more on that side, and the people who like the more fun side, they can border on that side. I think that'd be a good balance to get both styles of fans happy with the game, and, you know, as long as you had regular content coming, not too regular that distracts from any future releases, if that was to happen, you know, but like regular content stuff that people could enjoy the game, I think that'd be really cool. When it comes to Easter eggs, I'm just going to say, look at what Saints Row 2 did, look at what the Reboot did, do that again, please, because they are both great. They have some really detailed Easter eggs, and I really loved a couple of the ones that made you use your brain a little in the Reboot, for example. Like, when you saw that, like, golden statue thing, and you had to, like, read the clues, follow the clues around the map, and it would take you to the hidden Easter egg, I thought that was so cool. And, yeah, I would love for them to kind of keep that going and keep doing that, because I think, when I first discovered that, it was absolutely insane. You know what? I'm going to tell you the story of that. I know this is, like, totally off topic, but in the Reboot, there's that silver statue, and it's basically, like, telling you the clues of how to find the Easter egg. And I was playing co-op with someone I'd literally never really spoken to that much before. Literally a brand new person I met through YouTube. And we did it together. And the hype I felt when I found the hidden UFO in the shed at the back of the map, I was like, oh my god, we've discovered the coolest Easter egg. This is so cool. Oh my god, it was like actually tracking down clues to find it. And that feeling is fantastic for me as an Easter egg player. You know, I'm also a big fan of stuff like COD Zombies, where, like, you really have to use your head to figure out the Easter eggs and stuff. And I like doing the Easter eggs in those games. So, yeah, to me, I think that that would be a really, really cool way of doing things, and I'd love for them to do it like that, where, like, they have more detailed Easter eggs, I guess. Consumables is a fun one. I'd like for them to just kind of bring back the Saints Row 1 system to keep it short and sweet here. I like that they used to let us have superpowers from certain consumables, and I think that this would be another fun way to bring back more players kind of enjoying the open world elements. If they want to eat a burger and that makes them go crazy with super strength, totally cool, totally fun. And, you know, I think that could completely work. However, like, of course, I wouldn't necessarily want them to go too ridiculous with it. I don't need super sprint and stuff. Just kind of like, you know, balance out some weirder and wackier moments from certain consumables, and let it go from there, I guess. So, the last couple aren't too big, but they're ones I just kind of wanted to mention too. Wildlife would be a big one for me. I loved when they started to add, like, coyotes and stuff to the Reboot. I thought it was really cool, and when I first saw them, I was like, oh my god, that's so cool. I think they could improve this by having, like, maybe rare and more hidden animals out in the wild. I think that could be really cool, and, you know, having maybe more weird and kind of, I don't know, kind of lore behind the animals would be cool. Like, I know this sounds really dumb, and this is a dumb example, but it'd be cool if, like, in the lore, a certain animal was extinct from the area, and then, like, you go into the woods and you could find it and be the first person to find it and, like, take photos of it or something. I don't know. Stupid example, but you get the point. I'm saying they could have, like, rarer wildlife and kind of keep it fun and, you know, having some really just cool animals out there. And I guess to me, that'd be something I'd be really into and I'd love to see. And the final one I would want to come back is stuff like side games. I was really disappointed in Saints Row 2022 when they had this little, like, Coyote arcade and you went there and you couldn't play a single game there. It's like, man, you're teasing me. You go back to Saints Row 2 and you can play Zombie Uprising, and that's cool, but I don't think even that's enough. It was good for the time, of course, but I think, you know, going forward, we're gonna have like 3, 4, 5 maybe hidden games in there. Would we ever see any of this stuff though? I don't think so. I think that that's the real message here. As cool as this hypothetical game may sound to me, and hell, you may absolutely hate how this game sounds to you, at the end of the day, it don't matter. Because it ain't ever gonna happen. This is just how I'd take it if I was to make Saints Row. And it sure as hell is a good thing I'm not making Saints Row. Because I'm sure many of you would see this and go, man, that sounds terrible. And that's completely fine. I'm sure I'd look at your games and say the same. Isn't that beautiful? Anyways though, thanks for watching this weird video. I'm sorry it's so long. I heard you guys wanted longer videos, so I've been kind of thinking about upping the length a little for people. So let me know if this is the type of length you want. If you want longer, shorter, let me know. Thanks for watching everyone. See you soon.